Less than 1% of venture capital is invested in women-led companies. And yet, for every dollar invested in a women-led company, we deliver 152% more revenue than our male counterparts. And so what the F, right? We started to unpack and peel back the layers of this onion to understand what holds women back, why aren't we getting funded, and more importantly, if we were funded, what kinds of opportunities would exist in the world.
Gente, welcome to Bold by Design. Today I have a special guest, and this is, unfortunately for me and for you, the last episode of season 1. Thank you everyone for joining me during these 5 episodes that has been incredible. Each one of them are a must watch. Every single episode brings so much knowledge, so much strength, and most importantly, every one of them has brought an incredible woman to the table. As you already know, Bold by Design is the space where it's open for powerful ladies to come in and share their story, what they're trying to do to change everything in the market. So in this episode, I just want to welcome Kaitlyn. Thank you for being here today. I'm so happy and excited to have you.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited and a big fan, of course, and the types of conversations you drive are exactly the kinds of conversations I love to have, so I could not be more excited to be here.
I love it. Well, first things first, I just want to open up the microphone for you and kind of tell us without titles who you are. Tell our audience, what do you do? What are you passionate about in this very moment? What have you been trying to build in the last maybe year or two? And let our audience get to know you a little better.
Yeah, I'm just like, where to start? I have always been focused on wanting to make the world a better place. I know a lot of us say that it's very much a driver is how do we get to the root of what's behind so many of the things that happen in the world that we know can be better. And early on in my career, I identified business as a vehicle for good, as something that I love, right? So I identify as, an entrepreneur, a person who is relentlessly focused on trying to support up those who are moving the needle in all sorts of good ways across many different industries. I have a knack and a love and a passion for really good branding. I fall for good branding all the time. If you hit me up with an advertisement and the branding and the customer journey is great, I'm going to support it. So I'm bringing these couple of these things together, but I also, going back to the root cause of a lot of issues of relentlessly focused on how we solve them. And so I've got kind of in my world, a couple different projects I get to work on, one that allows me to engage very heavily on that brand side, and the other that allows me to engage at another angle where we are trying to get more women in the seats of funding those companies and those entrepreneurs who are making the world a better place. So that's a little bit about me. I got a dog and I love him. And so that's a little bit of a fun fact for you.
I love it. You mentioned a couple things that I want to really dig into it, but I want to tell the audience, one of the reasons why you're here is because you're overseeing this amazing project that I came across through my previous guest in this episode, in this podcast. It's called the Jane Project, and it's something that I'm so excited about. I definitely want to talk a little bit more about that because what the F is the Jane Project? For people that don't know anything about it, just tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, I love that you said what the F, because what the F is really the foundation for the Jane Project. Because so at the Jane Project, we are educating and preparing women to enter the world of venture capital and to become investors in the private equity space. So what led to this was my co-founder, Allie, one of those what the F moments, right? So today, less than 1% of venture capital is invested in women-led companies. And yet, for every dollar invested in a women-led company, we deliver 152% more revenue than our male counterparts. And so what the F, right? What is that breakdown? Why do we have that breakdown? That's not logical. That doesn't make sense if we're making decisions from a purely business standpoint in the venture capital space. And so we started to unpack and peel back the layers of this onion to understand what holds women back, why aren't we getting funded, and more importantly, if we were funded, what kinds of opportunities would exist in the world. So we get very excited about that, and it's what we're doing. So we educate women, we hold events where we bring in speakers as we can to talk about their experiences in the investing space. Investing has always been this world for a lot of people where it's confusing. It's a mystery. It feels like it's for other people, right? Not for us. And so we want to break down those walls. We want all the faces who have been left off the cap table to feel equipped, confident, prepared, and more importantly, excited to jump into the space of funding companies and being in the venture capital space.
I think it's crazy that a couple things there that you just mentioned. Again, not sure if it's something a society issue or is it a business issue or is it a fear issue, but the fact that us lady were capable to bring so much to the table at any level, it is just so crazy to me. It is so wild that we have all this talent. And again, I'm trying to make a disclaimer here. I'm not saying our counterpart males are not, any less. That's not what I'm trying to say, because I don't want haters in the comments. That's not what I'm trying to say, but it's definitely something that I can see where, I came across incredible women all the time, all this talent that at times almost feel like wasted. It's like, why you're not being seen? Why you're not being heard? Is it that we're lacking resources? Is it that we're lacking support? What is it? Because I'm pretty sure, I'm 100% sure it's not a talent shortage in there. So it's incredible that you are doing that. Your co-founder, your founder is also doing that. And I love that. I think it was one of those things that when I saw you guys on Instagram, I was like, oh, I love this. I love this idea. I love this concept. I love that someone is trying to build, a space, a community where other women like me, we can learn of all these terms that, like you mentioned, seem to be so complex. And then let me ask you, are they really complex?
No. I mean, there's layers to it, like anything, right? But it's not, I'll use the phrase, it's not rocket science. It really isn't. It is something that when you feel confident asking questions, and this is something I love about our events that feels very unique to our events, because we all go to lots of networking events and the conversation kind of tends to scratch that surface. But what's so interesting about the Jane Project, and I've got to really give it to our community, is that when people show up for our events, they're asking very raw questions. They don't bring with it that intimidation or that fear around being honest and vulnerable about what doesn't make sense to them or what they don't understand. I've even had to get corrected while moderating a panel, right? Because there's a lot of language and you can I called a limited partner a lending partner, and it's a safe space where that type of thing doesn't matter because we are actually all learning together. And so, no, it's not that complicated. There are so many great resources out there. What I think is part of the barrier and part of the opportunity here is just for us all to sit in the room and share our notes. We just got to be working together.
What kind of ladies show up to these events? What are those questions that, maybe some of them have asked at some point of these events that you think are valuable for our audience right here?
Yeah, love this question. So especially because what's also special is we are getting people from all walks of life. We are getting people from all kind of places that led them to want to be venture curious, as we call it. So we're going to get people who have invested already and want to build a community around the work that they're doing. We're going to get people who might be 10, 15, maybe even 20 years away from making their first investment, but they want to know about it. They want to engage. And you get a lot of women, honestly, who come to the Jane Project for that community where they can bring their whole selves and be vulnerable, right? So we're getting all sorts of people. We get women, female founders, because the other side of this venture capital coin is being a founder trying to get the funding. And so the more they can learn about how it works, the more they're empowered to go and pursue investment into their business. And so we're getting questions like one of the things that led me to want to join with Allie as a co-founder was at the very first event I attended that she held about a year ago, actually, we had a woman raise her hand and say, I'm a founder and I found this, this, and this in the term sheets that I've received from potential investors here in the Phoenix ecosystem. They feel predatorial. What do you guys think? And we had an opportunity to share notes and to say, well, that's actually pretty standard, or no, you should look into that, or maybe that's a red flag, right? And so to have that space where else is she going to get to have that conversation? And then what's cool about it is everybody else in that room gets to learn about an actual real world experience in the venture capital space. And so that's a question. We get a lot of, what is this? And what about this word or that word? Or how do I even know how much money I'm willing to invest in a business? And how do I know I'm ready to go take that leap? And something that came up at our last event, because, a lot of these things, we don't talk about feelings. We do not talk enough about how we feel. And so we spent a lot of time at our last event where we were talking about, and we brought in 2 investors, 2 women who've already made the leap into investing. And we got to hear from them about what it felt like to take that leap. What was your fear? How did you keep your emotions in check? How did you navigate through them? And it was very powerful.
In your experience, what do you think is like actual the real fear in there, like for a someone to take the leap into investment?
Something that we know about women is that our money we don't see as our money. We see that money as belonging to our family. We see that money as belonging to the community, right? And so when you go to take that step into investing, and the truth of the matter is an investment is illiquid. You can't just put $5,000 into a SVP or, write $100,000 check into a fund and then turn around in a couple months and say, hey, I need that money back, right? It is there for 10 years, typically, right? And of course, startups do have a high failure rate. And so it's a higher risk piece of your portfolio. And so I think a lot of the fear is knowing what point it makes sense to add this to your portfolio. And then you just have a lot of fear of saying, well, am I doing this right? As women, we kind of fixate on the right and wrong, right? And so, with the narrative out there, there's so many people saying, well, this is how you do it, and this is the right investment thesis, and you should have this proportion and that proportion. And really, at the end of the day, it's about just taking those barriers out and opening up an open conversation so that we can talk through those fears and say, oh, well, that's actually not something I'm scared of anymore.
As I'm listening to this, what you're saying, I keep on thinking a lot of this comes because we ladies, we tend to be very strategical and we tend to overthink a lot. I mean, I believe most of the women that I know in my life are, very data oriented, very much, let me plan this, let me do this, let me do research, let me do this is like, so in our mind, I believe we need to have like all these things happening before making a decision, whereas our counterpart male, they are more risk oriented. They will be like, you know what, this sounds to me like about right. And let me just take the risk. I mean, if I have the right amount of money and I have the right intention to invest, I'll just go with it. I think it'll work out. Whereas we're like, constantly overthinking. And like you say, sometimes it's just not having that right space where you can just, very similar to like a best friend, just like talking about those terms, just having those, like, I really don't know what the F I'm doing. Like, I'm not sure if this is the right path. I'm not sure. I don't even understand this term. I mean, my guess is that's where most of these, possible investors are sitting, where they're trying to figure it out if the decision they're trying to make is the correct one. Which prompts me to the next question. Like, what is mostly the investments that you guys are trying to get other people to invest in? Are you guys kind of like coaching business owners or like entrepreneurs to like say, look, here's a little bit of a portfolio, certain business or startup businesses that we believe you can potentially take leverage on if you invest? Or how is the conversation goes?
Yeah, no, I love the question. And I think it also ties into something you were just saying. As women, we're not less experienced. We manage risk all the time, but taking that leap and being willing to follow, your intuition in the business world, because we talk a lot about, feelings are not as present. People act like feelings are less present in the business world. But in truth, when you're looking at a startup and you're evaluating whether you can go invest in a startup, it's all projection. It's all estimates. It's all, or guesstimates, as my grandmother would have said, right? Hopes and dreams and, a little bit of experience on the team and understanding a little bit of the market. But there's no sure thing here, right? And so as women, we're often known, and I'm right there with you, absolutely nothing against our counterparts, but women are known for having instincts and strong intuition. And investing is kind of an intuition space, and men are making these decisions based on their intuition every single day. And so we just need to feel confident doing that as well. As we look at the Jane Project, we've started with education being our core pillar of how we're trying to get more women to step into the space. But education isn't where we want it to stop. We want to actually create pipeline opportunities and forge partnerships with different emerging funds and funds that are excited about bringing our members in. We want to build those partnerships so that there's a pipeline of opportunity women can pursue. Now, something that is a real barrier here is that many of these funds are looking for checks at least $50,000. That's a big check to write when you're feeling like you just want to start experimenting and playing in a space. That's a big commitment. And so we're working on building a partnership through an SVP that will allow our members to contribute a much smaller check size. So we're hoping that the entire SVP, which by the way is just a fancy term for an investment vehicle, it's where you pull all your money together and then make the contribution into a fund. So we're working on building an SVP where we're hoping the whole thing is $50,000 and we have at least 10 investors. So you can do the math on that check. It's a lot lower than what it would take for a single woman to go try to participate in a fund. So that's the approach we're taking right now. But I will tell you, this is what we've got at our fingertips, and this is not where we're going to stop.
I love that. I love the concept. And I also want to mention, I want to go back into this part of the conversation where you mentioned a lot of this is kind of like guesswork and intuition. And I'm 100% with you on that, because there is something about the vibes.
Yes.
And I like to call it vibes. Well, people who know me really well, they understand when I say it's not giving me the vibes. And it could be something as simple as, maybe a new potential partnership, or it could be as simple as someone that I met at an event. And I was like, it's kind of like this person seemed great, but I'm not vibing with it.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's funny. I see it as something that is funny, but at the same time, I have learned to trust my instincts in so many times the hard way. Because every time that I have ignored my instincts, I put myself on those situations that honestly, I call them, I just want to get out.
Yeah.
I just want to get out. And I think in the investing space, which is kind of like the topic for today, this is such a broad topic. It makes me think too much about my husband. My husband, he is a finance expert, and he definitely enjoys this sort of topics. So he is someone who has literally spent a lot of his time educating me on those topics. And I think something that is super important, I'm not an expert, but I think something that is super important is like understanding how to read a plan, a business plan. I think yes, a lot of it's kind of like guessing work and intuition, but it's also having that acknowledge how to read a business plan. So how do you guys create education around that? Or is that something that, your event guests have asked? Is that something that generates curiosity?
It's definitely part of every conversation, right? So at every event that we have, that comes up as a question. It's like, how do I look at a company and understand if it's worthy of putting my money into it, right? How do I evaluate an opportunity? And so our speakers have addressed this a bit here and there. I think it's one of those open spaces where you can have conversation after conversation after conversation. At the end of the day, we talk a lot about this at the Jane Project, and a lot of our speakers bring it up. It's about, how do you assess the capabilities of the team, right, of the startup? How do you make sure that they can actually execute what they say they're going to execute? And then how do you look at a business plan and say, yes, this is well thought out? What are the components of it? What are the questions that you're not asking yet, or that are not, addressed here? So that experience is helpful. I think we should have an event on that. I think that should be a great future topic.
100%. I'm talking about that. How do you guys find your speakers? Because definitely this is a huge topic. This is not baby pants topic. This is big pants topic. And how do you guys are trying to bring on talented people that are so acknowledgeable that you also can provide that acknowledge to your community?
So we're pulling from our ecosystem, and we're networking, right? We're actively building the Jane Project network. And so my co-founder Allie has gone through really a very like robust journey here in the investment space. She's been a founder. She's had investors. She's gone through that side of it. She's worked in the ecosystem to support, innovation. And so we have a great foundation of folks that we've been pulling in from Arizona and beyond to speak about all these different topics. But we always need more people to come in. We're always looking for more speakers and folks who get engaged and excited and have something to share. So we work with partners a lot, right? So we'll be doing an event we haven't yet announced, but we've got a January event that we're working on that's done with a partnership that, again, will focus on education. Yeah, it's going to be very exciting. And so it's like, let's pull everybody in. And importantly, it's not just women. We're pulling men in too. Everybody has a seat in this conversation because in an ideal world, everybody has a role to play and an opportunity to participate.
And I love that. I love that everyone is included. With everything that is going on in the world right now, inclusion is everything that we need.
It is.
Definitely everything that we need. And also, we shouldn't be limited, though. I think there are all kind of backgrounds that bring something special to the table. Which reminds me of this other question, like when it comes to like venture capital, is it something that is age related? Is it something that, like you just notice, well, you have to have like certain, level, or is this something that anyone at any age should start at least learning about it?
Excellent question, because there is a legal barrier here that you have to go through. So to be an investor in a company, you need to be accredited. And to be accredited, you need to either have $200,000 of income or $1 million of assets. If you're married, that's $300,000 of annual income. So that's a barrier that keeps people from participating. It also is a threshold because it is important, and we talk about this at Jane events, that venture capital is a piece of your portfolio, but it doesn't make up your whole portfolio. So you really want to start building up your portfolio with the more or the less risky areas before, you can make sure you've got your emergency money, your K or an IRA, engage in the public market, right? Build a stock portfolio. And then when you have maxed out or reached your goals in those areas, that's when you add in the high risk profile investment of VC. So that there's that kind of legal threshold, but the legal threshold is also kind of tied to recommendations on how to stay stable and financially sound while you engage. That being said, there's going to be a multi-trillion-dollar wealth transfer to women specifically over the next 10 years. Actually, I want to say 5 years. I think it was 2030, but I'd have to check that stat. But it is going to be multi-trillion dollars that are moving from the hands of men to the hands of women. And so we all have to get prepared. A lot of that money, by the way, isn't inherited. A lot of that money is earning. It is how women are, despite every barrier against us, working very hard in our career. And so that's kind of this big opportunity we at the Jane Project see is like, how do we make sure women are prepared to step into that role with that wealth transfer?
I love that. I love that concept because preparation is everything in life.
Yes. Yes.
And I am a firm believer that you cannot wait until the perfect moment to start doing something. You just, you got to start preparing without the resources. You got to start believing in something before everyone else believes it's possible. And more importantly, you got to invest in yourself. Because at the end of the day, I'm trying to see everything that you're mentioning. This is literally preparation, investing in yourself, learning how to build that portfolio, getting ready. So when the time comes, you're ready. You're ready to express yourself, to prove a point, and to have a seat on the table. And that's just, it kind of like happens in anything about business, from personal to like a really high level business. I think everything happens that way. I think no one, if we translate this into a, maybe entry level position in a company, if you wait for you to get prepared to be, positioned as a VP, that may never happen. You just got to start preparing yourself. So when the time comes, you're ready for it. And I think that's how I see it. I love the Jane Project. I'm super passionate. I always share, everything on my Insta stories. I believe there is so much power behind venture capital, just in general. I think there is also a lot of misconceptions. I do believe that it's also kind of like a lot of fear when we're being talking. I mean, it's not a term that you kind of like go sit and have some tea with friends and say, well, we're going to talk today about venture capital. Like, no, it's not, it doesn't happen organically. So I love the fact that you guys are actually trying to make that happen organically and in a safe space where everyone feels supported and feels like they have somewhat of a mentorship. That all said, something that it's kind of like common in every single question that we kind of like been talking about is we have talked about how to build a portfolio, how to take some risks, intuition, and all that. How is marketing coming into place? I feel like it's something that you have kind of like on your background. Anyone who goes to your LinkedIn profile will see it. Actually, I will leave all the information of this episode and how you get part of the Jane Project on the description below, by the way. But that all said, like, how do you see marketing? How do you see, is marketing playing any role in the venture capital? And like, do you see it like working together? Is that a thing?
I mean, absolutely. So, gosh, marketing is like a deep relationship to the Jane Project, partially because that's how Allie and I met. Allie is a brilliant marketer. And as I was rising in my career and learning the ropes of being a marketer in a startup, Allie was my mentor. And she helped me really, she gave me the keys to the kingdom. She helped me understand a framework that I still use to this day. As an agency owner, a little plug for Magic Branding. As an agency owner, one of the things that was so frustrating to me was that we work with startups, we work with innovators, we work with really disruptive people who are fed up with something and setting their sights on fixing it, right? Like that's what gets us excited. I am frustrated with how many clients we've had and folks we've talked to who have phenomenal business models, have something that is not only a great market opportunity, it's a solid product, it's highly profitable, and it can't get funded. And so we have to change who's making the funding decisions if we're going to change who gets funded and what problems in this world get solved. And so there's a deep relationship there just because it's the lens that Allie and I bring to it. There's also a relationship. You asked earlier about evaluating a business plan and how do you make sure that how do you assess and make sure that the company you're investing in has a chance, right? And marketing plays a big role in that because at the end of the day, it is the marketability of what that company's offering that you're investing in. So the ability to kind of learn from the space in marketing about what it takes to commercialize something is a big deal. But that's only one of the disciplines here that's really helpful. So I want to make sure our listeners here, like operations, finance, there are so many hats that you can wear when you're looking and thinking about, what you bring to the table as far as developing an investment thesis and assessing companies. Marketing is a piece of it. There are many others. But for the Jane Project, marketing, of course, is a big part of our story. And the last thing I'll say on that, folks, go follow us because the more people we have like you, Genesis, that are sharing our content, the more members, the more people, the more speakers that we get to pull into the Jane Project orbit, the bigger that this thing can get and the more people we can reach. And ultimately, the more women we see taking their role in the venture capital space.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think creating more seats for ladies out there. That's just,
yes.
It's something that I deeply believe in. I personally see myself sometimes, in someone else's mirror. I think it is super important to have that validation. I do believe that, again, we're so talented. There is, for how I see it, there is no limit, whether you're a man or a woman or whatever you identify with. Let's not get there. There is really not limits for anyone to do anything. I just love definitely the concept for Jane Project. I love the vision for this. I think there is so much to unpack and I love all this, but you just mentioned something. So Allie served as a mentor for you in your own kind of like digital agency business. What is the one piece of advice that she gave you that now you have been taking with you on every single part of your career?
Wow, narrowing down is tough because there's so many things. What I learn a lot from Allie, and something that you can't have a conversation with Allie for longer than 5 minutes without really feeling and experiencing, is this earnest curiosity that she has. And she asks the most brilliant questions. I'll watch her do it and I'll be like, I would never have thought to ask that. And so learning to ask really good questions is such a superpower and a useful tool in so many areas of life and in the VC world and in marketing, right? And so Allie has taught me a lot about asking good questions. I mean, more practically speaking, she did introduce me to a wonderful book on marketing and a model that I continue to use today. That's a little specific to marketing, but whether she's not here, so I'll just say whether it's, mentorship for how we navigate the big picture of our careers or the tactical advice, Allie, and I encourage everybody to seek out a mentor. Having a mentor is a big deal because Allie's opened more doors for me and for Magic than I could even speak of. And now we have this opportunity to go build the Jane Project together. So mentorship is beautiful.
What if I just got curious, what are some of those questions that more people should be asking, whether it's on venture capital or whether it is for someone that is trying to build a business? What are those questions? Because I do think, I love that point. We get so almost like automated. And I personally feel that sometimes I'm kind of like on auto drive mode. Like I go in life and sometimes if I'm not really, like intentionally trying to be in a specific mood or like in a specific place, I literally will not create any connection. I will be having a full-on conversation. Don't get me wrong. I'll be having a full-on conversation, but I'm missing out. Like I'm not fully present. I don't know, maybe life gets too easy or I'm overwhelmed, but whatever the case. But what are those questions that really help someone kind of like, let me just wake up a minute. This person is actually asking me something that is great. I should be paying attention.
I think with Allie and as we think about the value of asking really good questions here, I think it's an approach and a philosophy, right? I experience this, a lot of us experience imposter syndrome and intimidation when we walk into like a networking room or we're meeting people for the first time. A lot of women face this. I know a lot of men face this. It's not a gendered experience, but it is something that is very overwhelming. And we have this habit of getting into our comfort zones, right? I have a line I use anytime I'm at a networking event that makes me feel comfortable walking into a room or a group of people I don't know, breaking into the conversation. But I don't see Allie do that. And I don't see I think the strongest networkers, the strongest builders, the strongest community people, community organizers, they don't default to this mode of, here's where I feel safe and comfortable. They're actively listening and they're willing to ask about the person. They're willing to ask something that maybe doesn't have a whole bunch to do with the topic at hand or the event that you're at. It's not, well, what do you do? It's, tell me about your journey. What was the moment that led you to do what you're doing? It's being willing to get a little outside of that box. And Allie is a profoundly curious person. And I think that taking curiosity, that's a core value of the Jane Project. We refer to our Jane members as venture curious, right? So embracing curiosity and being willing to speak up when you're curious about something, I actually think is the core philosophy at play here.
I love that concept. And you were just referring to networking as something that, as an environment that it feels almost forced. And it's interesting because we're podcasting right now, but I was just listening a few days ago, another podcast, and the conversation was all about like actually networking. How do you build a strong networking? And I think the guest, I don't remember her name, but she was saying a lot of the success on a networking settings comes from the fact that you're not actively thinking that you're doing that to sell. You're genuinely curious about what other people are doing. You're really trying to create like that connection. And then she also said, and that's why social media feels now like the same way that it feels, because it doesn't longer kind of like fit that, same emotion that we used to feel when, I don't know, when maybe Facebook was, the beginning of it, or like when Instagram was the beginning of it, that it felt like a real connection. Nowadays, it almost feels like, well, you go to a networking event, you get to know someone, and you left that person, and you're almost 100% sure you will get a message getting pitched an idea. And that right there creates a disconnection because I feel like no one wants to be sell the idea of anything. Like I feel like we're so overwhelmed with information, with ads, with like so much going on that we're like, I don't need another method. We're at a point where we're seeing networking like that. And then you are mentioning networking as something that's really getting that curiosity actively awakened and like saying, okay, I'm not doing this because I'm trying to get something out of it. I'm doing this because I need this. I need this connection. I need to get to know other people. How do you think, in the people that is attending to the events from the Janet group, how do you think they're feeling about that? Do you guys ever talk about that?
If we could do a whole podcast on networking, because this is such an interesting topic and it's fraught, right? Like it's nobody loves it. I feel like very few people love networking because we have this experience with it, and yet it's something we all do. To me, this actually comes back to marketing. So, I mean, you're marketing yourself at a networking event typically. But if I'm going to be really reductive here, boil marketing down to two camps sometimes. One, there's some folks who are trying to hack a system, The others are people who see marketing as a vehicle for building a relationship with an audience. And so if you walk into a networking event and you're like, this is going to be how I hack the business that I need in a short amount of time, versus saying, look at all these people I get to go build a relationship with and build meaningful connection with over time. If you're trying to hack, you're going to be very disappointed. It just does not work, and people don't like it. Just like you said, if you yourself don't like being sold to, I don't know why we think other people like it. And in my early days, when I was a freelancer and an independent consultant before we launched the agency, I didn't have business. I needed to go build business, and I also needed to pay bills. And so it is so hard when you feel a strong need to walk into that room and not let that need be what you wear on your sleeves, so to speak. But I will tell you, the second I let go of networking being a tool of sales and appreciated it more of a tool of community, or another word we use here for revenue generation, if it makes you feel better, is business development, right? You're developing business through the relationships in the community that you have. And so the more that is the focus, at our Jane Project events, something that's different is that people aren't going to our events to build business. You may not even go to our events necessarily to build a network. You're going there to learn, to talk and dive into a specific issue. As a result, you're coming in with a different energy, a different vibe, right? A different goal. And it means that the conversation kind of bypasses the icky part of, what do you do? I do this. And that typical networking that doesn't feel good, and allows our members to engage just as people. And in doing so, I actually think the networking is stronger.
I actually believe that is true. I found myself in a certain situations where I'm like, what is it why I'm doing this? Do I really need to do this? When it comes to networking, a long time ago, I just realized, yes, it's a powerful tool to do business because it's mostly being used to do business, whether it is to create an actual business or to build a business portfolio in your personal brand. It is still a tool that is being used. But I found more success where I set myself in certain environments where it's just natural. Obviously, no need to say I'm Latina. So like I'm constantly looking for, Latina opportunities or like groups that are doing educational content for people that looks and sound like me. And it just feels natural. And there are other situations where I do think, okay, if I see myself maybe here, what kind of like environment I need to like actually challenge myself to put myself in those spaces, because it's also a matter of challenging yourself. Where you want to get, and you don't have to make it difficult. You just have to find like something that is common ground for both parties involved.
Yes.
And just get educated on that. I think it's an amazing, way to see networking. Like you said, it's a business development scenario rather than a salesy scenario. Boom.
Yeah. And
Go ahead.
What's so interesting about what you just said too, right, is that, and we talk a lot about the barriers to women getting into VC or women getting funding or women getting traction, right? And one of those barriers is when we go to those networking events, we look around the room and we're like, oh, who do I relate with here, right? Who is a safe person to go talk to? Because they don't look like me. They have a very different mindset than I do. I don't feel like I belong here. How do we change that? We change that by showing up ourselves, right? Because if one of us is there, then we find each other, right? And we have to be the road to changing the faces that show up at the event. And so I always find it a little bit easier to try to serve folks outside of myself. So if I'm going in with a mission that's bigger than myself, I can pull from that mission to feel a bit more confident and to get the motivation to break into that group of dudes over there having a conversation around, VC, and they don't think of that, I can play in that conversation. So I'm going to go walk right on up and say, how's it going, guys? Because I see the bigger picture of what my role at that event can do for the bigger picture for women.
I love that. And I want to kind of start to get into a closing because this has been amazing. But, timing is timing. But something that you just mentioned that I think it's key for anyone who is, whether watching or listening in this platform, is if networking seems like the big elephant of the room for you, I think it is so important just to get out of your head and like Kaitlyn saying, just try to think about you're doing it for another purpose. It's not for you necessarily. I have been in those situations where I continuously tell myself, you know what? I've done events for other businesses. I literally have created events for other businesses. I literally have spoken on that branding. Why is it so difficult for me to do it for me? And yes, like it feels sometimes like it's not natural. You literally walking into a networking event and you're literally doing this. Like awkwardly smiling, looking around and trying to see who am I gonna talk to first. It is definitely an experience. I think for me, what has always helped me out is the fact that I'm like, well, I just gotta talk to someone. Doesn't have to be perfect,
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't have to be perfect.
I always like to say, okay, and if it's awful, I'll just leave. It's fine. I give myself the out. I never take the out, but I give myself the out because it just gets me in the door.
Yeah, and this actually made me remember this other podcast that it's been around on social media where it says, have you ever heard of like fake it until you make it?
Yeah, I've heard that phrase.
Well, they were saying, no, you have to not fake it. You have to become that and believe that you're become that. Because the moment that you believe you're something, you're able just to do it. Because your brain, your personality needs that switch, needs that intentionally, focus on, you know what, this is me now. I'm not faking it. This is not something that I'm faking. No. This is me. Literally me. And I thought it was a good way to see it. Because I'm always against the whole fake it until you make it. It's like, no, I just can't fake it. Like, you cannot fake personalities. You cannot fake the way that you speak. You cannot fake how you act, how you behave. You can do it maybe for a little bit, but I mean, if you're trying to build, again, connections in a setting like networking, the people that you're getting to know at that specific moment, you are most likely going to talk to them again. So if you're faking it, by the time that person reaches out or you reach out to that person again, they're going to be like, wait a minute, there's a disconnection in here. And it comes down to also being very authentic.
Yes.
And I think regardless of the goal, you have to serve yourself grace and you have to be authentic for you. Something that my previous guest said on her episode was that, when you're you will attract the right people to your circle. And I truly believe that is true. I mean, it is a powerful statement. And it's what is happening with the Jane Project. You're building this that is attracting, a specific target audience. And I'm excited to see it growing. I appreciate so much of your time today. For anyone who is really connected until this point of the conversation, all the information from the Jane Project and Kaitlyn and Allie will be in the comments section below. Make sure to share. Make sure to drop your questions if you have any. I would love to bring you on again for maybe a second part of this episode where Allie can also join us and we can unpack so much more because venture capital is not going anywhere and us ladies, we're here to stay.
So true. And we'd love to be back because, I mean, like you said, this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to dive into.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Kaylee. And as my background says it, happy holidays, everyone. Enjoy your time off. Share with your family and the Jane Project. I'll see you.